So I've just come back from an interesting workshop that I was running for a large food ingredients company that I was working with in London. And when we were together, we were mapping the level of progress that they've made in the entire organization, how much work that they've done in order to drive this innovation program that they're running. They had run a few innovation sprints with large cohorts of teams. They had a few successes. They even had one successful product that had been launched coming out of these innovation sprints. They had an innovation board with leaders in it. They had trained a group of coaches that were now coaching the teams, making the company more and more independent as they try and build their innovation ecosystem. But what was interesting was, even though they were having as much success as that, in fact, much more success that I've seen in a lot of companies that I've worked with, somehow the work they were doing felt like it was grinding, slow, and they weren't getting a lot of momentum. It didn't feel like it was a lot of fun. Every time they were launching a new innovation sprint, it took a long time to get people to commit. There just wasn't a lot of momentum. And when we did the review and the analysis of the work that they were doing, we realized that they were just doing the work and they weren't celebrating the successes that they were having. They weren't actually telling the story of the success that they were having. And I believe that storytelling is a really important piece of the work that we're trying to do when we're trying to drive innovation. So what I have is a flywheel model that I use to explain how innovation works. And the goal is to not try hard or work hard. The goal is to try and make the transformation or the innovation program we're working feel good. So we start with consistent action. Consistent action produces visible results. And then those visible results create a growing engagement. And so if you think about it in kind of the way that the flywheel would work, you could ask yourself a whole bunch of questions, right? Are the actions that we're doing having a visible impact on the organization? Are we producing results? And if we are those visible results actually attracting people to us? Are we getting more and more people joining our movement, which then drives even more action, right? Are we getting to work on cooler and cooler things? And so you can see how the momentum kind of starts to build, right? You start to work on cooler and cooler things, you produce even more visible results, more and more people get attracted to the work that you're doing. And so that's what I was trying to get the team to understand, that we're doing consistent actions and that we're getting results, but somehow those results weren't visible. And the difference is that to make those results visible, you have to engage in storytelling. So the whole point of storytelling is to try and get people engaged, try and get people enthusiastic. So we need to tell stories that resonate. And this is a great book by Nancy Duarte and colleagues that I highly recommend when you start engaging in storytelling. And what we often say is try and lead with narrative, don't lead with data. Because data might seem cool, right? Sharing all the successes you're having in terms of numbers, but actually leading with narrative is better because stories are much more resonant. People resonate with stories much more than they do with data. So try leading with stories rather than data. And then when you're telling the story, there's actually a few things that you can do. The most important thing to try and do with storytelling is to make it feel familiar to the people, right? In psychology, we have the mere exposure effect, where people are much more attracted and resonate with things that are familiar to them. So try and leverage familiarity in the way that you tell the story. So we often say, speak their language rather than yours. Try and use the language that people use within the organization. Don't speak jargon. Don't try and use big words. Use language that they understand. And even more important than that, try and celebrate internal successes. One of the things that doesn't resonate is if you tell stories from outside your company, where you're talking about Google or Facebook or all these external companies. Sure, those are great stories, but the stories that really resonate are stories about internal success, the success that you're having internally. And then what you want to do is you tell those stories. You want to make your colleagues the heroes. Don't make yourself the hero. Celebrate the people that you work with. Make them the heroes. Because if you do that, it then starts to attract people to say, okay, this is really interesting. And what's interesting about storytelling as well is that people find stories more resonant if they can recognize themselves in the characters in the story. And so you want to tell stories that resonate by making your colleagues the heroes of those stories, right? I think that's fundamentally really, really important. And then as you sort of conclude your stories, invite other people to participate. Because when you invite other people to participate, you open up the doors to your movement, right? People can start joining your initiative because they've seen their colleagues as heroes, and now they're being invited to also make a contribution, which then gets the momentum going with the initiative transformation that you're working on. So in order to then sort of sustain the momentum, what you then want to do is to really pay attention to how the story is being received, right? How are people reacting to what you're saying? And then really focus on those colleagues that are really finding the story interesting and are already asking you how they can participate, and then really double down on those, because that's how you then grow the number of people that are joining your movement and becoming part of the work that you're trying to do. So I'll leave you with this thought. When you're working on transformation, you don't have to beg, plead, coerce. If you do that, you're doing too much. What you really need to do is to create momentum. And you create momentum by getting visible results, then telling that story, which attracts other people, which then gets you to do even more consistent actions. And that's how you then start driving momentum. And as that becomes faster and faster and faster, you can see the change start to happen within your organization. Wishing you the best of innovation luck. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe below, and also share it with people that are working on innovation or transformation so they can learn some of these lessons that I'm sharing with you here.